Good to have you with us. So it's almost done and dusted, isn't it? The 2021 municipal election results have seen the ANC losing its power grip in several metros. So how do we begin to interpret this, and why is it so important? Could it be a vote of no confidence by the working class, perhaps living in the metros? Well, let's try and help answer that key question. It's always a pleasure to welcome Cosatu General Secretary, Mr. Bheki Ntshalintshali, onto the show. Bheki, always good to have you on eNCA. So is this a case of the ANC losing support from the working class? We'll talk about your statement in a moment, but what do you make of that first comment?
No, good morning. I think it cannot be interpreted any other way that in this election, the working class voted on their feet. They refused to come out of the barracks and support the African National Congress. I think it's quite clear that message should be loud and clear to everybody else that unless something is changing, the voter apathy is growing in a very, very fast way. And I think it's just a threat to the democracy.
I'm going to ask you to unpack that for me as to why you think the working class is possibly moving away and taking its support away from the ANC. But I want to go to the statement, Mr. Ntshalintshali, that was released. It says here, and I quote, "We find it disappointing but not shocking to see the ANC share of the national vote decrease to below the 50% mark." Why are you disappointed but not shocked to see this decrease?
Look, we're not shocked because the trends has been indicating that for a very long time, the ANC has been losing some support of the working class in terms of voting. And we're not looking for something drastically changing to that trend. So in terms of the reduced kind of support, I think everybody was predicting that the ANC is going to perform less than in the previous way. But with the commitment made and with the commitment made in the manifesto, with the attempt to correct our economy, with the attempt to deal with corruption, we've thought that the ANC is in the right track of recovery and trying to gain the confidence of our people. But I think it came too little and too late, to an extent that people were saying, "We're hearing you, but we don't believe that you would be able to do what you are promising us."
There has been talk for a long time, though, Mr. Ntshalintshali, forgive me for interrupting, that the ANC has been saying for a number of years now that they are a party in recovery. At what point does the recovery lead it back to the party that it used to be, and how long, as you as Cosatu, are you willing to continue supporting the ANC?
Look, let me start. The Cosatu attempt, support to the ANC, we have said many times, is assessed every time we're going to the election. It's not a permanent arrangement that forever we'll be voting for the ANC, and we're getting that kind of support from our members. If our members come to the conclusion and says, we're not going only to vote off our feet, but want the federation to pronounce that we're not going to support the ANC, the leadership will have to pronounce on that one. But in regard to how long it takes, I think we're seeing some little results, as we're indicating, that the effort done by the president, which is unfortunate that when the whole organization can only depend on one person, that is only the president that people can trust to listen to. But to the others, they said, we have said these things in the past, but we have not honored that kind of commitment. And therefore, we're not going to be either voting for another party, but we're going to hold our vote. We're not going to come out because we don't trust any of the many political parties of their commitment.
So what would you make then, as a final question to you, Mr. Ntshalintshali, of the coalition talk of the ANC, the DA, the ANC with the EFF, the ANC with any other of the smaller parties? Would you be in support of coalitions, knowing perhaps the coalition partner might not be as forthright about workers' rights as obviously Cosatu is at the moment. What's your thoughts briefly on coalitions with the ANC and other parties?
Look, generally we can't oppose some kind of coalition coming up.
Mr. Ntshalintshali, I'm still with you. Go ahead. I am still got you. I can hear you. Carry on, please.
Okay. Yeah, no, we said the coalition, it seems, is going to be the order of the day in our politics. The question is how we choose the other part. I mean, in the last few years, we've seen the results of coalition. We've seen how disruptive they can be, but it cannot be ruled out. Our view is that whoever the ANC form a coalition on would be looking very close to that part, particularly to the interest and its poachers to the workers.
Well, I appreciate your time in speaking to us this morning from Cosatu. It is Mr. Bheki Ntshalintshali also asking the question there about coalitions. I think it's going to be very difficult to talk about coalitions until we start finding out actually who is going to be in coalitions with who, because there's so many ramifications. I mean, you could randomly pick any smaller party to go into coalitions with the ANC or the DA or the EFF, but until we know who is talking to who and who's forming these coalitions and going to those manifestos. Because if there were such different political parties that you would vote for them separately, how do they try and align? And who is actually in charge in a coalition as well is still one of the big questions.
And that's an important point you're raising there, because I was just reminding you of that conversation that Govind Whittles had with Zingiswalusi, president of Cosatu, on the 1st of November. I mean, she had just cast her vote, and she was very confident that, you know, they still support the ANC and that they had agreed on certain policies and that had a fairly good working relationship that addressed some of their issues. But I suppose the votes did not reflect that, right? Because the working class still did not either come out to vote or they did not vote the ANC in their majority. It looks just according to these votes.
One also has to wonder if the working class isn't necessarily supporting the ANC. Who are they going to look to for support from a political standpoint going forward? So many questions to still ask as well.